Welcome back, everyone, to the exciting and terrifying world of That Which Sleeps. I'm very excited because I have a new microphone, so I don't sound like I'm under the sea anymore. Also, we're going to look at the scenario today, which is extremely exciting for me because everyone's been asking about how it works, why we did it the way we did, and here's my chance to convince you that it is a great and fantastic way to play the game and very unique compared to other strategy games. Alright, so we can jump in here by clicking on Begin Game, or we can click on Custom Mode and add in a bunch from a list of custom modes that people can upload. So these are different from having a custom scenario because each of these mods is generic. So you can have one like a horde mode that adds an increased spawn rate to orcs, or you can have something that makes tons more heroes spawn in for a scenario, and you can pick several of them just to make the game a bit more different. We're going to jump in with the regular Begin Game. Alright, so here we go. The first thing you see is this mandatory event. This big event window is only used for important mandatory events. So normally when you see this, you'll have several options to choose from, but this is the Welcome to the Game event. So you only have Summon Your Herald at the bottom. We followed this kind of gold at the top, blue at the bottom aesthetic because we wanted a contrast. The top is the theme of the choice, Summon Your Herald. The bottom is what actually happens. The prophet activates in the Great Seal. Before I click on this, one thing to note, because we won't be seeing it again, look in the upper right, you see that scroll, it says That Which Sleeps. That's this event right here. Events occur there, so when you end your turn and a bunch of things happen, you'll get a list of events in the upper right of things that might require your attention. Alright, so we click on Summon Your Herald. It just scrolls up and you see the herald, the prophet popping in. Before we look at the game map at all, although I really want to talk about the game map, let's talk about the interface because that's important. So, this is your basic interface. You have end turn menu, ignoring that. Upper left you can see the prophet with a black circle. That circle is meant to have his portrait there. We don't have a portrait for all of the agents yet. But that's where you'll have your list of agents that are in the game. Going down the left side of the menu. Clicking on them will bring up that agent, and then you can go in and access their menu from the same interface by double-clicking on it. Now, looking at the top, you see a list of resources. You can acquire resources globally in That Which Sleeps to then either divvy out to your shadowy allies or to keep for yourself to use in bribes, building your own forces, or in the case of lore, you can plant misinformation, you can research spells, etc. Looking right below that, you see one orb. That's your one orb of the X you need to sleep. We're playing as Aslan here. He needs 15, so he needs a lot more of those to wake up. The other thing that orb does, though, is that it lets you use powers. So when we see some of Aslan's powers, I'll point out the resource cost. If I click on this top here, this pops in the general screen for the old one. So here's the overview. Aslan, the dreaming god, he who lurks, and it gives you a big status the world's unaware of your return. That changes in different ways based on how much the world knows about you, if the prophet's been raised, etc. I'm sorry, the chosen one. Looking at the left, you see status. It's a bunch of stats that you keep track of what you've actually done in the game. And the bottom is the chosen one panel. So if you know about the chosen one, if you know even a little bit about him, it'll start accumulating all the information right there. On the right, you have your ability tree. So you see his 2 ability trees, and then any ability unlocked will be shown without the red dark orb above it. If it's not unlocked yet, the dark orb will be there, and it will show you how many orbs you need to have before this unlocks. So if we go mouse over it, you'll see Penumbra, which you would have seen in the last video, as well as Dream Fog. I'm not going to spoil all of them, but we can go down and see a Palace Apart. So when you get to 2, which is very, very quick, you get this amazing ability, which lets you add another unique building slot to any point of interest you control. Unique buildings are very, very powerful, and we restricted it to 1 per POI because early in the game we found you could just stack them all in one place and defend that, and it was too strong. This makes you spread them out and makes it more dangerous as heroes come and try to destroy them. Over here we can see Faces of Guilt. So this actually is a rare ability. There is very few immediate combat abilities. We wanted this to be a strategic game first and foremost. We have to plan in advance. So this torments the target with the guise of those they've betrayed or lost. Effects may range from nothing to a loss of willpower and escape. So this depends on if the person feels guilty. So if they have someone that died in their past that they loved, it will be devastating to them. If they just don't care, it does nothing. So this is another case where you need to know about the hero. You have to have infiltrated them, know about their past, and then you can use this ability on the proper hero and they will react to it. So agents Agents is probably confusing to you right now because everything's the same bland look. Again, this is where we're going to be putting the faces when we have them. So when you want to recruit an agent, you come in here, click on the agent you want. You have 1 of 4 right now, so we could recruit some. Also, it lists your deceased agents and your corrupted heroes on the right. If you want to add a corrupted hero to your agents, you would just click on him there. He joins your side. But keep in mind, corrupted heroes, like all available agents, have a passive bonus they give you. So you may not want to recruit them. The passive bonus can be very useful. In the political screen, it shows all the nations of the world, as well as the guilds, that's what the square ones are on the left, and what their affiliation is right now. Everybody's neutral at the start, pretty much. Under the shadow, that's you, that's the Great Seal. In some games, the Great Seal expands and conquers the world. In most of them, though, it remains just where it is, and you end up infiltrating and using other nations. The Alliance is not yet formed, so if the Alliance forms, it'll appear there in whatever form. If the Chosen One's a part of it, he'll appear there as well, and it will show you who's leading it. Alright, so let's get back out of this menu. Before we talk about the world, let's go over agents and POIs relatively quickly, because those are, of course, very important. So if I click on the Prophet, you'll see his little hot link appeared at the bottom. It has his health, profile, and his challenges. We aren't talking about challenges because those are massive. We're going to have an entire video about challenges coming up. So click on him again, or I could click on the thing in the upper left. It pops up and shows the Prophet. So, looking at the Prophet, we can see we have his profile here, 0 fame plus 5 from traits, so he has a trait penalty to it. His health, when a hero reaches 0 health, he's dead. Not all the tips are very useful, but there are tooltips for everything. As I talked about in the last video, everything has tooltips. So the top is your static information, what is strength. Your bottom is, how did this value come to be? So here we see 1 physical and 1 ancient. There's 1 physical damage, which is almost irrelevant. Nobody will die to that. But ancient is pretty powerful because it's unblockable. There's no way currently in the game to block ancient damage. So if you see a mage at 1 life, the Prophet can, with this very rare damage type, actually just finish him off. Speaking of which, that image there is not the Prophet, that's the Guild Master. We don't have all of our portraits yet, so we're just putting random placeholders for some of the agents. Infiltration lets you do the most important of challenges, in my opinion. It lets you place spies, it lets you infiltrate guilds, it lets you coup guilds, it lets you go into the capital and the palaces. It's very, very useful. It's how you get corruption in the game. Defense, how you defend against damage if you're in a fight. Arcane lets you cast rituals and also imbue people. Command is very important. Command lets you raise troops and minions and determines how many minions you can have. Since minions can raise your stats and give you valuable traits, you want as many as possible usually. And labor. Labor is derived almost entirely from minions, so without minions you've got nothing. Below is status, minions, and items. There's no minions and items at the beginning of the game, but let's take a look at Dreaming and Gold. This is, every single agent has a unique scheme. His is unique, actually, the Prophet, even more unique, because he gets a different depending on which old one you chose, and also sometimes the selections you made. So, the Prophet gets Dreaming in Gold, which is a fantastic ability. What it does is, although it's very difficult to do with 5 difficulty, what it does is, it takes someone from the POI you're in, so again it takes planning, the person has to be there with you, and it puts them into a deep slumber in the Dream City of Gold, which is where Aslan actually lives. So, when that happens, the person is removed essentially from the game, but a quest is generated for other heroes to come and try to save them from there. It's almost even better that they try, because when they do that, they go into your realm, which you can do many wonderful and terrifying things to them. So you can see at the bottom there's 3 orbs there, so it takes 3 orbs to actually use this ability. Most of them do have a pretty high cost. And traits. We used to have traits just written as text, but you had to mouse over them anyway to get tooltips, so we made them into icons. Dark Conduit is an inherent ability. This agent is cursed. He can't be imbued like other agents. Instead, he just gets stronger as the old one wakes. And the other trait is Fanatic, which gives him the +5 profile, because he just can't stop talking about old ones. And he gets a few abilities from this. Any minions with him get resist fear and shock, which is great, because a lot of the higher level heroes can simply cast aside a lot of your minions with fear. And when in a profane square, the agent gains 1 Ancient Shield defense. Ancient Shield, just like Ancient Attack, blocks anything. Alright, so let's just scroll on over. You can see it stays in the menu, so you can move the guy around. In fact, let's just... Movement is, you see this little exploration marker down here? This says, move 1 by any standard route. There's other markers as well. But standard route is sort of anything by road. Some of the agents can fly, you can get traits that give them flight, etc. But move over here. You can always move back and forth between the one you moved from in case you made a mistake, but you'll see now it's grayed out. You could not move to a new spot. You see also when he moved from the Great Seal, which is one of our territories, and he only had 2 challenges. Here, this is a neutral, essentially hostile, village, and he has different abilities. So depending on the square you go to, you have different challenges you can make. Now, let's move around a bit and go to an interesting POI. So POI stands for Point of Interest. It's just anything on the map that you can actually interact with. So before I click on this, you'll see that every one of these POIs has a little pop-up. It has the name, of course, but it also has 3 stats underneath it. One of them, on the left, the sword, is Order. Order directly hurts you when you try to run a challenge against it. It subtracts its number from your ability, and that gives you how long it's going to take to do it. With 8, for instance, the Prophet, who only had 3, would never be able to do a high-tier challenge here. Defense next to it affects how strong it is at fending off attacks. Someone attacks this POI, the 7 is added as defense. The rightmost, the little map, which we also used for walking around, is danger. So danger is how hard it is for an adventurer to do something here, or a hero. So over here as a quest in Aventura, 0 means it's really easy. Some places have a 10, 11, 12, really high. It goes there, it's going to be very dangerous encounters for the hero. It's very good for you, of course, high danger. So let's see, clicking on Aventura, you pop up this map. It's got a lot of tooltips, of course. Sorry, this little menu. So Aventura at the top, there's the name. To the right you have its terrain modifiers. So every place has these up here: plains, trade roads, and nearby ruins. These give effects, like you see this is -1 order, +1 lore. So if we went to order, you'd see it's a red because it's a negative. 10 from being a republic city. Every government type has different modifiers. -1 for nearby ruins, -1 unrest. Defense, +5 for being a city, +2 republican zeal. That's the cultural value that Aventurans have. Danger was 1, but -1 because there's an adventurer's guild here. Effects, this is why I clicked on Aventura. It's the only one with a dynamic effect on the first turn. War fatigue, -1 order from unrest from the burning city you may have noticed before I clicked on this. Below it you have the resources, so you have how much they've stockpiled, and then you also have how much they generate per turn. So you might notice that these are negative and going down. Luckily they get the resources from the POIs around them, so a city takes the food in from its neighbors. So though they're consuming to a turn, they actually get some as well. Of these, the only ones that are really special are trade and lore. Lore is very important because lore helps heroes to code your clues. You hate that. It also helps them make new spells to defeat you. You also hate that. Trade, when it adds up enough, trade can be cashed in for one of 2 things. Either one of any resource, or it can be cashed in to improve relations with your neighbor. This can really, really hurt you, because a lot of these nations hate each other, and you're playing off of that. If they use it to reinforce each other and become friends, this is going to hurt you a lot in the long run. So they have buildings on the left. You see there's 1 special building per city, and then they can have up to 3 regular buildings. We used to have 100 buildings in these places, and we thought it was wonderful, that tavern and everything listed. We got rid of all that and restricted to 3 more special kind of buildings. So this, for instance, is an outfitter's. Whenever an adventurer or hero wanders through here, he's going to hit +1 on his next quest, because he went to a place to get rope and hooks and flint and steel, as all adventurers do. Institutions. So institutions are guilds, orders, cabals, and ideally cults and religions. Right now, so you can see this is the headquarters because it's gold around it. So this is the headquarters of the Fine Company, an adventurers guild. They have an agenda of exploration. The agenda is what they have their guild members do. It also gives bonuses to the areas they're in. There's a few guild houses. The headquarters is here, and there's 2 other guild houses on the map somewhere. So this is a POI. At the bottom, you can also see what they're doing. It gives better information if you have infiltration. You'll see a lot more. So this is a general POI. It's got a fair amount of information, but most of it's represented at a glance right in the middle. Oh, you can also see cultural values. There's a breakdown of what's actually there, because if there's a lot of Aventurans and people they hate that are in there, there's a good chance of having some kind of riot. So they're all white, so they're fine, but if some of them were red, you would know that the boiling point is coming. Same thing with population. It's broken into classes. So free men, noblemen, and others. Aventura doesn't have a problem with that, but a lot of the other states are slave states, and if there's more slaves than aristocrats, you have a problem. Alright, so let's close out of this guy, and just take a look at the world around us. So, oh, before we do, at the bottom you'll notice that the abilities that I have as Aslan unlocked are at the bottom. So these are map abilities, although I can't use them because I don't have see any heroes here until I have infiltration. So Penumbra and Dreamfog you've already seen, so I don't need to go over them. But just keep in mind they're down here and you can use them with a quick click. So, going back up to where we started, here, the Great Seal. The Jagged Empire, the Severed Tongue. So that mechanic of just the Empire and Kingdom names popping up can be disabled. It can be set to reoccur only every 30 seconds, every minute, whatever you want. I like it. It's very thematic, I think, and brings the world to life. So you're surrounded by essentially Orc Kingdoms, Goblins, and the Order of Twilight. So these are your easy to infiltrate natural allies. It still takes time, so there's still a question of whether you want to pursue it, but it can be a natural expansion path for you if you want to go that sort of organic route. But you play the whole map in this game, which is both a strength and a weakness in our design. It's strong because you can do so many different strategies. When you summon an agent, you put him anywhere on the world. The problem is it's hard to figure out what exactly to do, so you'll end up losing a lot of the games early on. So you can see there's different banners for the armies. The banners are bigger depending on the size of the army. You can't get specific information unless you have infiltration on that. The origin of this world, the idea behind it, was that there were these ancient kings bound by tradition that once ruled all of this area. They struggled heavily with the orcs of the north, asked for help, and in came these colonizers from across the sea. So it ends here at the Golden Republic. They came in, helped out a bit, but then took over. And that was the original kingdom of New Caledon. New Caledon here. It used to control all of this area as well as the north. But as a slave state, the Aventurans broke off. That's where all the slaves that fled the Empire go. That's a source of continuing tension, as you can tell by the burning city midway between them. Looking to the south, you have the Arden Protectorate. This is a dictatorship that broke off from New Caledon as well, which of course leaves New Caledon in a weakened state, but wishing to expand. The Arden Protectorate is one of the two major military powers. You can see its massive expanse here. It is simply huge. Neighboring on the west is the Kingdom of Sylara. These are the kings that were exiled from their own land and came over here. It's a big nation, but it has more of a weakness than Arden. Arden borders nothing that's hostile. Arden just has a long sea coast, so potential for war there. Sylara has not only a boundary with the orcs at the Last Guard, they also have all of these uncivilized nations in the west. So the uncivilized nations are... they're good for you because you can screw with them, and people won't believe that anything bad's actually happening. Even if you take them out with orcs, a large horde, use arcane rituals, the people of a foreign culture won't believe the other culture as readily, unless they were to raise their relations through trade and become friends, or some other events that I'm sure can happen that make them more modernized. But anyway, so there are several nations. Before we go back over there, the Vasily Enclave is actually interesting right here. An enclave is a unique government type that has an off-map empire that it's a part of, which is what makes it an enclave. So the idea for this is that if you mess with them, if you do something with them, they can call in a massive fleet with a huge army from off-map. So though they're small, it's an interesting point for the AI and for you to manipulate. Alright, going back over there. So we have all these different nations. The Adamri, the Seven Tribes, the Fists of Eris were the more militant ones. This is an interesting area with a lot of dynamics going on. Yes, each one is weaker in general than one of the more modern nations, but together they can be quite strong. There's also the Elven nation hidden over here, the Great Woods. And you know elves, whenever they're on a map, can be devastating. The Travelers Cathar. So there's, again, more smaller nations over here. You've got your two gigantic nations and several mid-sized ones, and a lot of these smaller tribes. And that brings us right back up here to the top. So, that's the map for the North Burns. Whenever I look at this map, I just want to conquer it, no matter how many times I've done it. Oh, those birds that you see flying around actually do have a function. You can upgrade them to wraiths and to wyverns later on, and they just represent sort of a passive threat throughout the map. Also, there's an aesthetic part where they just flock around the Chosen One, though all of these particle and 3D effects can be turned off even with low-end machines. And if you do that, you'll end up being replaced with just a marker. So all the banners as well can be replaced with simple markers. And as I was saying, so this is how we've designed the map. We think it's a fantastic scenario, and I hope that you agree when you play it. So on our next devlog, we will be covering combat, which occurs not as frequently as you'd imagine, because often you're trying to avoid it. And then after that, challenges and events. That kind of brings the whole game back together and having really a good idea how to play the game. Alright, until next time, bye.